Baratunde Thurston is a best-selling author, podcast and television host, and a cultural critic focused on the intersection of race, tech, democracy, and climate change in America. On his podcast, How to Citizen with Baratunde, citizen is a verb, and Baratunde discusses new perspectives and practices from people working to improve society for the many. Hey, that's us. Baratunde,
Hey,
thank you so
kindred
much
spirits.
for being here with us. Yeah.
Thank you for having me. Good to be back and Happy New Year.
Yeah,
Happy New
and
Year.
and I have to say, no good deed goes unpunished. Mariah doesn't know how you ended up coming back to us right now, but I had,
Tell
uh,
her, you got to let her
I,
in on the secret.
yeah, I'm going to let her in because Baratunde was in Kauai, the beautiful garden island of Hawaii,
Oh,
and I
great.
commented on one of his pictures and saying that I was going to be there soon for our vacation. And the sweetest guy DM'd me and gave me all this great advice and these places to see and make sure you download this app and do all that. And I repaid that
Nice.
kindness by waylaying him into the podcast again. So uh, thank you and my apologies, sir, for all that.
Did you take
Uh,
advantage of any of my advice?
Totally. Yeah, we downloaded the driving tour app, which was really fun. Got a lot of insight about the island from that.
Well, that's me paying it forward because one of the people who's in my like text messaging community list, she sent me so much stuff. And so I was kind of just resharing. It was like in the Tumblr era, you would say I was reblogging her posts toward you. And I think, Steve, this is a great way to start a conversation. You know, swing left, the party of progressives, the working people. Can we talk more about our tropical paradisian vacation? Uh,
Yeah.
I
I was
just felt
gonna
like
say,
we
where are we
haven't
going
fully
next?
reconnected.
But what I really want to know is, were you slumming it in coach or did you manage a business class ticket? Because that's what we need to know.
No, coach, I coached it.
See,
Yeah,
you're a
I was
man of the
traveling.
people. You're a man of the
I
people.
was. I mean, I took the exit row. Okay, I mean, I got that extra leg room. As under 6 feet tall, still too tall to not be in a human sized seat. But I was with my wife and her family. There were eight of us, age range
Wow.
9 months to 76 years old. So yeah.
Wow, that sounds amazing. So I'm glad to hear that everybody took some well-deserved time off after
Yeah.
the year that we had. So the last time we chatted with you, um,
Previously, swing left
was
with Bill.
November 2020, day after the election.
Oh
Got
wow.
got some comments about how exhausted we all sounded.
Really? People bothered to comment on that? Who would do that? Just keep your mouth shut. We deserve to be exhausted. We temporarily saved the country from authoritarianism. We deserve to be tired.
We were tired. We
We
had
had
a
mixed
lot to
feelings
talk
too.
about. We
Yeah.
did have
Yeah.
mixed feelings. The results weren't full of results weren't in yet. We had a lot to talk about. But that meant that we didn't get to talk about you. And
Oh,
we want to talk about you today and hear your story. So you call yourself a writer, comedian, activist.
yeah.
When did you first start using the activist label?
Oh, the year was 1977. I was born, and the word was thrust upon me by my activist mom. No, I think in my work, probably 5 or 7 years, I've floated through titles to try to explain who I am to people who don't take the time to just listen. And like, but what are you? It's almost like the question that people get about racial identity or gender identity.
Mm-hmm,
It's, but
mm-hmm.
what are you? Are you a comedian? Are you a writer? You can't be both. You pick a lane. So
Right.
I'm just a comma separated list, I think, in spreadsheets. So let me pick the things that I spend a lot of time on. And I was trying to signal my investment in the social and political,
Mm,
not just mouthing off. So it's a way to try to hold myself to a little bit of a higher standard. It's also just a way to try to signal to people that I care and I actually give a damn.
mm.
What was the first thing that you really jumped into as an activist? That you remember. What was that journey like?
The first thing I remember was high school. And, I graduated out of high school in 1995, and we had the Rodney King verdict come out then.
Mhm.
Which was, thankfully the last time we got a disappointing verdict about police behavior in the United States when it comes to this treatment of Black people. So it feels like ancient history because we're just not used to that kind of story
I
anymore,
was like, what?
So in that long ago far away place called Here and Now, I helped organize a walk protests circles with signs thing at the Department of Justice, the first no justice, no peace with the picket sign standing in the streets, the Black Student Union, which I was the president of at the time, or maybe vice president. I can't get the exact timing right.
This is in DC, right?
In Washington, D.C. I grew up in Washington, D.C. I'm a native Washingtonian, and I lived there basically till I was 18. We moved from D.C. to Maryland when I was 12, but I still was going to school in D.C. and considered myself
Where'd you go to
Washingtonian.
school?
I went to middle and high school at Sidwell Friends. And I went to elementary school.
I went to Sidwell through middle school and then went to DC high school.
Wait a minute.
That's right.
that's school amazing. Together. You vacation
together. Wait, what are your parents' names?
Pearson.
Yeah, okay, we have different parents. Okay, good.
Yeah, we do.
Just checking.
We do. I know. We look alike. We could have been separated at birth. But...
Wait, are you related to Ellen Pearson?
No.
Who worked at Sidwell? Okay.
No. I'm a little bit older than you, so we digress.
You're a little bit what? Younger than me, you said?
Older.
How old are you?
I graduated in 89.
No.
Yeah. I know. For those listening to the audio, I look adorable on video, and I sound so youthful, but in fact.
That's really, so you're 6 years. I would have guessed wrong. And if my life depended on it, I would have lost my life on that.
Well, guess. Thank you, young man. I'm glad you didn't have to bet your life.
Did you know Cheryl Conti? I feel like she was Sidwell 89. No. But maybe you left when she arrived because you swapped out. Like
I did. I left after middle school. Yeah.
And I showed up. Yeah, so you would have probably just missed each other. Great. Well, this is super. Mariah, I'm so glad we're having a good amount of time.
Hawaii, friends. So far, the activists are getting everything they need for 2020.
This is great. Yeah. So look, I mean, the short of it is like I had some questions about using that word because activist to me meant like the sort of full-time sacrificial commitment, and you're physically out in the streets on a regular basis. And that's not my medium. I use my words, I use my presence. I try to use, if I'm on a mic on a place like MSNBC, deciding what I'm going to say and who I'm going to promote and what to try to amplify. That's a form of how I try to do what I consider activism. But there is a more committed, more professional level to this game that I don't do. I'm not regularly getting arrested. And I'm not, full time just doing that work. And there are many people who are doing that. So I want to acknowledge some of that spectrum of possibility while leaving the door open to people who are like, to be an activist, I have to like give up everything and be only about this one thing. And I don't think that's the case either.
No, I like that word spectrum to describe it because it opens it up to so many more of us who don't really have the time to get arrested on, any given day. So
yeah. Do you have time to get arrested on a regular basis? That's a good question for 2022. It might be required more.
Yeah. Let's talk a little bit about your podcast, because this is actually kind of related, because I want to know if the goal of the podcast is to create good citizens, or actually I guess it should be citizen good, since you're using citizen as a verb.
To help people citizen good. Do you citizen good, Mariah?
You citizen
well.
So is that what you...
We went to Sidwell Friends School. It's citizen well.
Citizen
Do you want people to citizen well? And if so, do you citizen well?
Ooh, look at you. Accountability and whatnot.
Yeah,
I don't know, just bringing it. Yes, that is the goal. There's many goals to the show. One was just to vent positively and give people some kind of media and story to connect to that didn't just inspire frustration, disappointment, and rage, which most of the kind of newsy media I consume triggers those responses. I don't think that's
Right.
healthy. I don't think that's reflective of the way the world actually is. I think there's so much good. I think there's so many people coming together. I think there's folks fighting the good fight and folks who are not fighting, who are doing other things that are worth showcasing in terms of how we live together. And then I think, another goal was to kind of try to create a culture that values democracy. The small d people powered thing that we claim to be, but have never fully been given this country's history and present. And how do we remind ourselves what that word means? What does people wielding power actually look like? What are the ways we can grow that power and build that power and use it to benefit, our collective, which is kind of the whole point of living in a society versus just being a bunch of individuals next to one another,
Right.
which our culture tends to promote heavily. So how do we do that without it being this whole academic white paper type journey, and make it more interesting than that? So those were goals, and making citizen a verb in the title was one way to do it. And it's not called How to Be an Activist, right? Which I think is less inviting because people have preconceived notions that we've discussed some. So citizen, what does that mean? And can we make it not mean just legal paperwork and borders and customs and that kind of legalistic noun term? How do we participate and be what we have been trying to be for a long time?
I love
And you have to follow up. I'm not going to weasel out of it. Do I citizen well? Sometimes, I am showing up, checking in for jury duty later this week. I find myself checking in, at a very micro level, like just trying to connect with neighbors. COVID was actually really good for that. I wasn't on the road so much. And I learned a lot about a neighbor who I just had been kind of dismissive of and too busy for, in the before times. And I'm going to the grocery store, do you need anything? She sends all caps text messages to me when I'm on MSNBC, which is lovely. And I'm sometimes a good neighbor, much more than I used to be. I find myself looking up what my city is up to on issues I care about, like sustainability stuff at the very, very local level, which I didn't always do, and figuring out how I'm spending my money, reconsidering where I'm banking as a form of trying to citizen well. Like, who am I given the privilege of leveraging my dollars for potentially nefarious BS? And I change that because that's also creating the world that I'm living in, and maybe I don't like how that world looks. So I've been learning a lot through making this show, and my homework is infinite now because I have found all these people in so many different domains citizening in ways that even I had not imagined, I would have considered going into the project.
I love when you talk about doing that in your own community, like really, because that's where it all starts, is in your neighborhoods. And we need to take care of each other in our neighborhoods, and we need to, the golden rule is like, leave the place better than you found it, right? And that at its core for me is the work of being a citizen and citizening. I guess I'm going to verb it.
Darren, that.
Yeah. And what we try to do on this show too is get people involved locally, and then as much as they can to help out. This season you're focused on tech to do citizening. What have you learned from that so far? What are the takeaways that you've gotten from tech?
Steve, we can do so much better. We can do so much. So look, there's
I guess what I'm asking is, how can I get more followers on Twitter?
That's a perfect question. Terrible.
No, I'm sorry. Go back to what I was.
There's a lot of many of us who are more active in the democratic arts, right? Small d, can get a bit particular attitude toward people who aren't. Well, it's a democracy. If you can keep it, if you don't vote, then it's on you. How dare you not? Right? We if we get a little taste of what it is, we can get a little holier than thou for those who haven't. And I think sometimes we forget that we live in a system which makes it hard and unnatural for us to show up in our collective power, to be there for one another and with one another, not just in competition with each other. Our economy sets us up against each other and doesn't leave us time to citizen. Who has time? People out here juggling all kind of jobs, trying to make, stimulus payments stretch and all. Healthcare is still a shambles in this richest nation in the world. So we're dealing with some bullshit that we really should have outgrown by now, but we're remedial in our advanced stage of development. It's quite a paradox we live in the US. So in that context, it makes a ton of sense why more people aren't involved locally in some way. It just feels overwhelming and exhausting. Technology and the way we experience it and the way it's been funded and incentivized can further drive a wedge between us, letting us only see certain messages, catering just to our hyper-personal needs and our individual preferences, right? Algorithms tuned to individual preferences, not collective beneficial outcomes. And Twitter, to your follower question, was not created to sustain or extend a healthy democracy. It was created to make its investors rich. And it's not doing a great job of that, by the way, which is why the CEO just had to go. Facebook wasn't created to be a public commons. Facebook is a gigantic mall, and it's an attention hoarding apparatus, which is very good at hoarding our attention, not so good at creating a healthy public square. So this whole season, we spent not doing the mini rant I just did about what we don't have, but finding the people who've built things with tech that give us what we need to live together better. And we went all over the world. Thank you, pandemic. We could do it with the click of a trackpad, and found people who are doing collective fundraising for your mutual aid group where you don't have to have a lawyer, and they have centralized all that paperwork so you can decentralize your activism. We talked about what it means to have a healthy digital space with people like Eli Pariser, and why you don't want all your town halls happening at a mall. That's not good IRL. That's not good online either. We found people in the Middle East who've created social networking communities where trolling just isn't a thing. And we've been taught that, like, well, it's just the internet. It's just the way things are. If you get online, you're going to get a death threat or a rape threat or some kind of doxing because you put your voice out on the internet. And that's just how it goes, little lady. It doesn't actually have to. That's how it goes the way we built the system.
Right.
The same way it doesn't have to go that only a handful of people have enough resources to feel safe and healthy in a society. That's not just how the world works. That's how America's chosen to work. And we could choose something else. So it's been a super inspiring season because I'm like, oh, we could build on different infrastructure. We could incentivize different things. We could fund these things differently. And folks are actually doing it. So stop begging Zuckerberg to change his financial interest and do something else. We have other alternatives. Also regulate Zuckerberg. It's not either or.
Also, someone push him off that wave runner thing, the foil.
Oh God. No, I really appreciated this season because I think you said early on that you really love all of this stuff, tech and social media and stuff, and what it could be, but not what it's become. What it's become, the mainstream pieces are destroying us, and certainly not living up to their potential. So
or ours.
Yeah. So highly encourage people to if they haven't listened yet, to listen to this latest season.
howtocitizen.com. Get it, do it, and then tell us what we meant.
How are you feeling in this new year about the work that we have ahead of us in 2022, and what would you encourage people's focus to be?
I am deeply concerned. I'm like Susan Collins, I'm deeply troubled and concerned about where we are. And the dynamics that we're entering into are not good. They're not good. Our president's approval ratings are really low. We've got a built-in sort of conservative, authoritarian, and growing, hardened, pro-violent strain that's been fed. We have midterm elections coming up that if Biden were doing great, would still be hard.
Yeah.
And he's not.
Yeah.
Just from a public sentiment perspective, he's not. And that's not good. That's not good, because if what has historically happens in the upcoming election, Republicans take the House and probably the Senate too, we've further accelerated our decline into a cultish political world. We have one legitimate political party operating on behalf of the people and democracy right now. It's a Democratic Party. And the Republicans are a Trump party now, not a true people's political party. And they're loyal to a man, not the Constitution. And they've shown, we're January 6th adjacent as we talk, and they don't care. They don't care. And they've shown time and time again that all they care about is winning in a way that involves also cheating. So the things that have been happening locally in terms of changing the rules and putting Trumpy loyalists in positions of electoral oversight and swapping electors and all that, it just gets worse if they control the House and the Senate. And the investigations and the transparency that we need into what has already gone wrong disappears. And then it lays the tracks for 2024 to be heinous. And this experiment to have run its course. It is an experiment. It was never a guarantee, but we're in a tight spot. So I'm not feeling great based on those dynamics. And I said, to be honest about that, I'm nervous. And I feel like many of us are still exhausted from 2020. Yeah, I'm a very engaged political person. I'm not feeling very engaged politically right now. It's like kind of hard to muster that. And so for people who have not even put themselves out there like I have, they got to be feeling it even more. I have the luxury of like a quality home and relative peace of mind, and I'm still burnt out. So if you've suffered through waves of COVID death or unemployment challenges, I can't even imagine somebody knocking on your door saying, can you stump for this local candidate I'd never heard of before? Because why? Tell me why.
Yeah.
And I've not been hearing a great reason why. I have some ideas, but I'm not hearing a lot.
Yeah.
How do you?
I really appreciate you acknowledging that, because there is, genuine, well-earned fatigue among, everybody. And I listened to our episode from over a year ago, the day after the election, and you were talking about the voter suppression, gerrymandering, all the things that we had to do to overcome to have what was the largest turnout in our history, and what a remarkable achievement that was. Now we are faced with either or both passing some laws to help fight against that, or just having a huge, even steeper climb ahead of us to overcome that. We have to do both. We have to make sure that we pass, just so you know, this episode is going to air next week. So we're coming up to MLK Day and hoping that we can get the For the People Act passed and carve out for the filibuster. But that is a long road to hoe. As activists and volunteers who are tired, where do you see the best opportunities and the most important places for us to, because we don't have a choice. It may be a steep climb, but we're going to climb it anyway, right? We may be tired, but we're not going to get in bed. We got to keep going, right? So what are you looking at that's going to be really important?
Look, Stacey Abrams always excites me, and I think having a Black female governor, any Black female governor, well, actually not Candace Owens, but a good Black female governor would be great. It's like they're not all the same, it turns out. So that'd be good. And I'm excited for her to be in an executive position. I think she came so close, and I think she's a classy, intelligent, and sophisticated leader. And I hope she can model that and model a different connection to the people, a different way to narrate and tell stories as not just a candidate, but as an executive leader that can inspire others and train others through example. Let's try that out. And the types of coalitions she's building and on the ground, the way she's not just Stacey Abrams, like she is the product of a lot of on the ground organizing from people who are really embedded in communities and are working year round to stay connected to folks about what their needs are and how to help meet them, and not just this transaction.
We got to hold Senator Warnock's seat there too, so she's
Yeah.
going to be very helpful.
So she can provide some cover for that. So that's exciting, and I'm looking forward to that. I want people. It's a tough thing to ask, but like, I need us to be afraid a little bit of what we can lose.
Yeah.
I think we are bombarded by so many types of media stimuli and messages. Everything just kind of washes over. Like, I heard people who I think of as like-minded and like-hearted, like, yeah, the January 6th thing, was it really that bad? And I was like, oh, we're doing that? So did they have to hang Mike Pence for us to remember it longer? Like, because a lawmaker wasn't killed, do the deaths not count? How callous have we become? And I think, for people who are worried about the passage of a particular bill, or Joe Manchin held this up or didn't do this or didn't do that, cool, true. We're not fighting for Joe Biden. We're not fighting for the Democratic Party. Take them or leave them. I'll take them, but some days I will leave them. We are fighting for our ability to live together peaceably, disagree politically without that descending into violence and overt control of folks or dismissal of folks. We're fighting for that small d democracy so that we can fight opposition parties politically, ones that don't believe in violence as a way to move forward. And then the last thing that I'll offer for now, at least we can have more of a conversation. I'm looking for, I need to hear something affirmative. I need to hear something that we are looking forward to, not just defending against or holding the line. We've been holding the line. We got to hold the line on abortion. We got to hold the line on the minimum wage. We got to hold the line on the blah, blah, blah. We got to hold the line on forest fires. We're just like doing little controlled burns, trying to stop the whole forest from caving in and burning our whole town up. That's a limited fuel source for keeping people engaged in the act of democracy. And I don't have a total answer, but that it's a strong feeling that I've not been hearing much of why are we doing any of this? And don't tell me any candidate name. Keep the candidate's name out your mouth. Why are we doing this? What are we fighting for? Yeah. What do we want for our kids? How do we want to live? What's the thriving future we want to be a part of? And how is this step going to assure us that we get closer to that, even if we don't see it ourselves? We're getting closer to it, and that's always the point. Progress, not finality, not total victory, just progress. And I think we're missing that articulation. And the Democratic Party is scaring the hell out of us with these text messages and these garbage emails, and that ain't it. We're not resisting, right? Resistance only goes so far, so that ain't it either, right? What are we creating? What are we striving for? How are we going to be thriving? And how do we connect that goal and that story to, listen, I need you to show up in this tangible way. I need you to make this call or give a little money or come to this meeting, because if you don't, the Proud Boys are showing up. They've gone local.
Yeah.
The Nazis are at the school board meetings now.
Yeah.
Right? So like that indivisible early swing left thing, like there's the Tea Party, then indivisible swing left, and now we pendulum, but the swings are getting more volatile, at least from one side.
I think it's out there also. I mean, I just saw some polling about all the elements of the Build Back Better agenda are still wildly popular, roundly popular with Americans. But you talk about all the time that we are still minority ruled. I mean, we do not have a representational government. Even if we get rid of the filibuster, even if we pass DC statehood, it is still. Oh, did we just lose Mariah, or just her video? Anyway, what happened to Mariah?
Maybe she's in the chat.
Yeah. Anyway, we're still minority ruled, and that's something that's very hard to put into the public square. Like, yes, we have all these things that are very popular, and Democrats are pushing for them, and they're pushing for you, but it's hard because we don't have representational government and the filibuster blocks stuff. So we're trying, I mean, that's a hard argument to make to someone who
It is.
involved.
I think we need to give people credit for being able to handle some complexity. And yes, we need to try to pass good bills and good policies in an environment that's not designed to support that. And we got to deal with people like Joe Manchin, because he's still, as much as I've dogged him, is better than having a Republican in that Senate seat.
Absolutely. Yeah.
We wouldn't even have this opportunity. We might not have had the first stimulus come through. We might not have had the infrastructure bill come through. We might not have had these judges that we needed in terms of democratic, small d, democratic infrastructure and functioning court.
Might not have. We wouldn't have.
Thank you. Thank you for removing my hedge. We wouldn't have. But you're bringing up some important, like, systemic stuff about, it's like, do we have a democracy, question mark? And like, how healthy, how robust, how sound is it? And because of the Electoral College and gerrymandering and campaign finance, and probably a few more structural issues, but at least those, the party that's appointed our 6 of 3 Supreme Courts didn't actually have a majority of the presidency to be able to do that. Like, we're kind of faking it at this point. And we've been unable to, or unwilling to, dive deep into the structural reforms necessary to renovate this old house. It's not serving us. Mm-hmm. And we're lacking legitimacy. And we can delay and compromise within only for so long. It's absolutely ridiculous that what people want, we can't get. And that's literally not how democracy is supposed to work, right? So the democracy isn't delivering on the will of the people. And instead, something else is happening. Something more apartheid South Africa era is happening because of those old Confederate rules and the electoral stuff. And we got to fix that. I don't know how the Constitutional Convention, like, there's some technicalities, but we're going to keep running into this wall until it's too late to try to undo some of this. Yeah.
Well, rightly so. You have a call for us to be scared, to be worried, and feel the urgency of the moment. And it's an overstated thing to say we're faced with the most important election of our lifetime, right? But God, it's just true. I'm not even trying to, use hyperbole. Our democracy is at stake. So, we should be concerned. We should be worried. We should also not let that keep us from being out there and doing the things that we must do as citizens.
When we're exercising, when we're playing a sport, when we're carrying a heavy load, it's not easy. It hurts. Like, if you sign up for a gym class, you're paying somebody to make you feel bad, to put your body through strain, but you get something out of it, right? You get more connected to your body. You get increased cardiovascular capacity. You get to sweat and let out some of your emotional pain points. And that serves us. That's helpful. I think, we go into this upcoming season and we want to preserve the House and we want to preserve the Senate and extend it ideally. Yeah. And we want some of these tactical electoral political outcomes. Maybe we'll get them. Maybe we won't. But what we will get is a deeper connection to our community, a deeper investment in where we live, a deeper understanding of how the system works and how it doesn't. And we come through that stronger, even if we don't win the seat or keep the seat that we intended to. We come through that clearer and more knowledgeable, maybe more frustrated. And then we can use that to do deeper fixes that we need to do, whether there's an election or not.
Well said. Well, I could end it there, but we have to ask you the question that we ask all of our guests. And we lost Mariah to a screaming baby, so that happens.
Baby 13, Mariah 0. That's how babies work. They always win.
Always wins.
Maintaining a undefeated streak.
Undefeated
against grown-ups.
Right. Yeah, exactly. There's a lesson in frustration and being dealt losses. but it's worth it because babies are great. Anyway, final question for you. What brings you the most hope right now?
Yeah. I'm what brings me the most hope? I think a lot of people are deeply awakened to some more of the realities of what feels off in our world. COVID revealed a lot of things that were broken, a lot of injustices, as one example of the past 2 years. And I think that's been healthy. And I also think more people have been made aware of their power. The number of, sometimes it's sad why, but the outcome's still positive. Parent friend of mine just organized COVID tests for their kids' whole school, worked with other parents, got the funds, got the tests. Like the government wasn't doing it. The school administrators wasn't doing it. No other parent was leading it. So she stepped up and she helped do it with these other parents and bought them some months of relative peace of mind.
Yeah.
When we're in a very passive state and nothing's being asked of us except to shop, we don't get to experience that. And it is painful and annoying, irritating, frustrating, even disappointing, some of the reasons why we've had to step up, but it's also given us an opportunity to step up. And that's practice. That's good. That's good for our connection to each other, for our sense of our own power. And I want for people to feel their power. And I think a lot of people are feeling more of that in different ways, not just around candidates winning and that rush, that adrenaline rush, but about sort of a community connection, a family connection. How I'm learning how to talk to people who are questioning vaccine stuff in a whole different way. I used to just shut folks down. You don't believe the science. Yeah. Well, I'm like, yeah, the science be changing, like you kind of had a point. And I heard Fauci saying things on Rachel Maddow recently that I heard anti-vaxxers saying a year ago. I was like, talking about kids getting COVID and it's not, being in the hospital is not the reason. COVID isn't the reason they're in the hospital, but they get categorized as COVID hospitalization. I'm like, I'm pretty sure we called those people idiots when they said that early on. And now freaking Fauci just said that on Madhow.
I know.
So more grace, more patience for some. It's not universal, but a lot of people are feeling that. And I think any additional person feeling that sense of connectivity, that sense of community, that sense of collective power is better for all of us. So I welcome that. It gives me a lot of hope and it refills my cup when I can get very overwhelmed with the darkness and the fear and the what could we lose, which is important, but cannot maintain the center of my focus at all times because that's unhealthy.
Well, that's great. And that gives me a lot of hope too. Such a pleasure to have you back. I hope it's not another year and it doesn't take me hijacking your vacation advice to get you back on the show.
That's such an organic way to end up on a podcast. And that was a smooth use of, our connection in that time. Like, hey, do you want to come on the podcast? And I was feeling that aloha spirit, when you asked, I was literally like in Kauai. I'd probably come from a hike. It's like, sure, a podcast.
Hell yeah.
But, thank you for being my first public anything of 2022. This is my media debut of the year. And I appreciate how y'all have been helping people show up and participate. That's a key principle of how we think about what it means to citizen. And you've built something that really helps people find a way to do it. And it's an easy thing to say, but you make it approachable, tangible, practical, and you've lasted. It wasn't just for like one election. So thank you for all that and for having the podcast and inviting me back. I will definitely come back before a year. Just figure out how to end up, like you said, we're on vacation.
Well, mahalo to you as well, my friend.
Hello, yes.
All right.
Happy New Year. Happy 2022.
Happy New Year to you too. Here we go.